All right, I think let's do a quick audio check for the guys. Watching 1, 2, 3. Good morning, Mr. Samuel Tasker. How are you?
Hey, happy Monday. Doing great. How about you, Rigo?
I'm good. I love Mondays. Mondays are always our chill day. But I am excited for everybody right now as we get into, thank you, Anita, as we get into our new conversation in regards to asset management and the concept of cradle to grave. Cradle to grave. So, Sam, we have the pleasure today of being joined by John Geno and Rife. I'm going to go ahead and bring them into the studio. Let's bring Ron in. Let's bring John in. And I'm going to let them kind of introduce themselves to you guys, the audience. But Donnie, let's give them a round of applause real quick. I don't know if you guys can hear this.
He didn't have
On your end.
We got to make it ourselves.
Yeah, we'll do that. Donnie's looking at me like, wait a second. It's all good, Don. It's Monday. Yeah, it's cool. Remember how I said get ready? It's totally all right. Nope, no worries. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on, but thank you very much. Ron, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience before we get started, and we're going to go to John and Sam, and we'll go from there. So, Ron, please introduce yourself.
All right, thanks, Rigo. So just a little bit about me. I have a background in mechanical engineering, and I spent the first 6 or 7 years of my career working for an aerospace firm in the helicopter industry. And I got into wind in 2007, working for a large turbine supplier, working in R&D, blades and blade improvements. And then I got into the owner-operator side around 2012, and I've been working in that side of the business ever since. So in that area, I manage and lead the engineering team for an owner-operator in the U.S. So.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. John.
All right. I started off in Southern California in aerospace, senior test engineer. Got to play with lots of fun toys, both military, civilian, and blow things up. Then came out to the Midwest and got into blades with a small company making 9-meter blades and retrofits for the root structure on those. And then opened up the first North American factory for a major blade manufacturer back in 99, 2000, and spent 20 plus years there. From technical director, production engineering, ran service for a couple of years for the Americas, and then regional quality manager for the Americas, which is Canada, US, and Brazil. So a lot of experience with time up tower and seeing what really goes on in the field and in the production side, heavily in the production side of rotor production.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Sam, you and I have done a few of these. But for those who don't know who you are, just a quick introduction.
Sure. Thanks, Rigo. Surface Navy vet, which means I worked on the world's finest fleet of ships, also known as the U.S. Navy. And after that, got into power generation on the owner side and also operating, and then also on the sales and marketing side, on the manufacturer side, and have worked on the supplier side as well. So it's a pedigree of operations, sales, and marketing, all in North American onshore wind.
Well, I appreciate that. So, and for myself, I've been in this industry since 2008, in and out of different operating roles, business development, and about 4.5 years ago, decided to move more into the marketing and branding for organizations and companies. And I am always interested in the idea of thought leadership and getting folks together to solve problems, life solutions. So that was one of the things I'm really excited about. And this conversation for you to understand, we're going to get into some things, and we're going to do this as a 6-part series through the rest of the year. But what we're really looking to do is not only talk about what we can do and how to become better, but we also want to get to a point by the end of this, we're putting some solutions in play, and hopefully you guys are going to get value out of this opportunity, value out of these conversations that will allow you to raise your voice with concept, we're willing to share in making our industry better. And so that's what we get into. Firstly, I want to thank our sponsor, Airtonomy, on this one, in regards to helping us getting this information out. We'll talk more about them later. Right now, what I want to do is get into the conversation. So, gentlemen, we had a great pre-call on Friday. And as we kind of got into that discussion, what I actually have a question for you guys. It's not this, but what did you guys get from even just that 45-minute talk that we had prior to this particular webinar? What were you guys feeling out of that?
That the industry hasn't matured much over the last couple of decades. And the problems I see on just the production side, my small, narrow window of it, I'm hearing from the other sides, from the operations sides and from other component manufacturers, that they're having the same problem. That in my term, the closed-mindedness, the narrow-mindedness of not sharing problems and concepts and how to improve among each other, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot.
I think that's very fair. Sam, what would you add to that?
I got involved with that emotional response to a little bit of disappointment that it doesn't feel like we're learning. It seems like reliability, should be getting better, and it seems like it's not. So I think I caught myself, and I really, then asked, and I wanted to ask everybody, if we do feel like that, how do we know that generally, right? If we're talking about the industry, are some people getting it right and some aren't? Is it in some pockets? What is that less generalized answer on if it's getting better or worse, and how do we know that? And I think answering that gives us some context to avoid generalizing and really, reach out and help explore some productive ideas together.
Ron's quiet. What do we got for you, Ron? What were you feeling?
Unfortunately, I'm pretty much in John's camp with the just the general feeling that we should be a little bit further along in terms of maturity than we really are. Having worked in the industry for, kind of losing count here, right? But it's definitely way over 10 years, right? It just seems like we would have gotten further in this time. The issues that we were working on 10 years ago are the same ones that we're kind of, struggling with today. At least it seems like to me.
No, I agree. I agree. So then let's kind of get into this and what we called this right from the title. That was one of the big concern, because it seems like the asset operators, much like yourself, Ron, are constantly to build something internal that's strong enough your teams improve and grow, when really in the end, with the investment that's being put into these assets and the amount of time that our industry is supposed to be maturing, could be getting back as investments. And there was towards the end our conversation, and I want to get right into that, because we're just going to let's go the hard one, and then we'll ease up as we get out. Let's get the hard one out of the way. But you made a comment to me, recall we had, and I loved that comment. I'm going to keep talking about it, because you said I know more about a $30,000 used car that I own than a $3 million asset. And interesting the amount of information that we can get from an industry. Now, granted, the automobile industry is dare to say close to 200 or over 200 years old. It's an old enough industry where there's a lot of things that have matured, but we're an industry that we're learning from other industries, different industrial energy or any other type of, specifically when it comes to manufacturing of large assets, the mining industry and so on and so forth. They have solved a lot of these particular problems of understanding this cradle to grave. Why is it that we don't have that? So guys first, and we're going to go ahead and guys get into it. We'll start with you, Ron, and then move down the list with John and Sam. But what is the OEM goal in this aspect? Like, where should they be in playing their part in helping us understand the entire manufacturing process, that cradle to hands that have touched it, and where it's going when we start to see failures in the industry. And specifically what we want to do is really focus on the blade aspect today. By all means, we'll get into other conversations. Where is their responsibility? I'll go ahead and run it over.
Oh man, you put me on the spot with trying to assign responsibility to the OEM.
Hey, like I said, it's totally okay. Where's their role? We don't necessarily have to put it on them, but what is the role they should be playing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the most simple thing, right, is manufacturing and supplying components that meet the criteria that we ask for, right? And the most basic, simple criteria is the I would say the blade design criteria that's put in the IEC standards, right? So that is what they're supposed to do to the best of their ability, right? So.
That was a short answer, Rob. That was short. Are you behaving, John? Sam, go.
I agree. That's the basic level. That's the bottom level of what
that is the minimum.
Yep. The very minimum. Let's add on top of that repeatedly that everything that comes out of the factory needs to conform to that standard. Now, blades are they're a sculpture work. They are handcrafted. Nobody, including Close and One Go manufacturing, provides a product that's ready to go out the door without somebody touching key critical. Everything from lightning systems to my favorite complaint about leading edge geometries. The saying goes from a few customers that have walked through the facilities I was working at, made the statement, who's your chief aerodynamicist? We rattle off somebody's name way up the ladder, and he points to the guy with the grinder. No, he is the guy with the grinder on the leading edge, and that's it. Or the guy sculpting filler on the leading edge. My personal pet peeve. So blades coming out the door do not act the same, and that has been made clear by some customers who pay attention to these things, such as turbine performance in the field. You can pick it up. You can pick up which rotors are performing per expectations and which ones are not. Now, the shocking thing to me is a lot of owners don't pay attention. They don't pay attention to what they could have made in power yesterday, would it not be that the turbine was not operating properly, whether on my side, blade geometry or erosion, etc. That's a whole nother story. But the repeatability of making a product which meets that standard every single time, it's the human aspect. And the human aspect, I think, Sam, you mentioned in our pre-talk something about the difficulty is in the implementation. Absolutely. It's all about people. And I can refer you to if you Google up an online document, the human side of the equation, I believe Bill Berger wrote that, from the automotive industry. That's a classic. It's a short little paper about how important the human element is. It's overlooked. Nobody pays attention to it. But if you haven't got that right, you will not be creating a quality, repeatable product. That simple, including implementation in the field when it comes to installation. Wow, that was a mouthful.
No, that was good. I appreciate it. So when we look at it, though, John and Ron and Sam, you guys, what is the OEM should be playing in this part, right? In ensuring that the human element, and I think you're absolutely right. We've talked about that. Material factory, different workers, different shifts, all of these different elements. Like how well is our QC/QR process in delivering these good products to us in the field. So when we're getting these at the beginning, are they really all the same? As we're going to get further in this conversation, there's the place as us when we're buying or when we're building a wind farm from the ground. up. But then there's also the other element, the ability of how does that data transfer from another, and the documentation of those assets, and ensuring that the next set of owners understand that the history of those assets so they make the right decision. Huge question for everybody. But Sam, before I let you kind of get in and jump in with some of the questions, I really love your perspective on where's the O in this, in the aspect of ensuring the life expectancy in the cradle to grave discussion.
Sure, and I heard that we expect them to deliver equipment, designs to a certain standard, and then I heard the topic of quality come up. And I think earlier I had said, is there a problem? And I think the elephant in the room is that, there is a strong opinion that, yeah, there's a problem, or there are a lot of problems frequently. There are more problems than owners would prefer, or more problems than are budgeted for. And if that's so, I think I just want to pivot that a little bit onto why, if the OEMs making equipment and building it to a standard, and we understand quality control, why are there still problems? What's going on in the market, either with the OEMs or with the way owners are operating them, or some other influence? What's causing there to be this perceived high level of reliability issues, be it blades or other components? And I'm curious what we would answer to the why.
So you guys, as we're getting into this, Ron and John, just you guys can jump in, and I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know and apologize right now, as I've been talking with producer Don. He's telling us that one right now, so he's trying to help stuff on the back end. So there's going to be a bit of delay. So by all means, you guys go ahead and jump into the conversation. Sam, drive that if you can, and drive some of these other questions that we've been talking about to work on some stuff on our back end. So
sure, and we got a little help from the audience, and I like some of the notes there. Someone's saying as part of the why is William Whitney. Hello, William. Saw him in San Antonio at a choice name watering hole. And good to see you out there, William. William says, I feel the OEMs are more worried about new turbine sales versus addressing issues on aging assets. And Tony chimed in, I agree, but there's also tremendous price pressure coming from the owners to consider. And I think I have to agree. We have low power prices compared with many other parts of the world, particularly compared to Europe. Maybe not so much in India, maybe not so much in Latin America, but it's relatively low. That price point drives owner price points because the asset has to provide a return on an asset profile. And if the owners are driving that and the OEMs are trying to bring their prices down, is that what's driving the perceived reliability issues? And I think that's suggested in William and Tony's points there. John, do you have any thought there on that price point driving that
I agree.
circular pain point?
Absolutely agree with that, especially when you're looking at short-term returns. Are you getting your product out on the monthly schedule you promised? Period. That pressure, again, we go back to the human variability that happens along in the processing. That pressure becomes extreme. I've seen some really bad things happen at some suppliers that are just shocking. You walk out in the field and you look at the wreck lane on the ground and you point to something and say, it's obvious what happened here. Somebody let this go and they knew it. And I don't care who manufactures the blade. I've seen it across the board. And that's really disturbing. But that's short-term view. If you add in the cost of warranty reserves, this seems to have about a 4-year cycle to it, where oops, a bunch of crap happens out in the field, and we tighten up the quality. We throw in outside parties into manufacturing plants. Again, doesn't matter who's who's building the blade. Everybody's done this type of thing. Now, wait a minute, that manufacturing plant has a fully staffed quality department. What's going on? We're really making sure that the operational is towing the line, and things tighten up and correct, and the cycle drops off as far as oversight goes, and production's clicking along, and the field experiences are profitable again, and then 4 years later, something else rears its head, and I'm just not speaking about blades in this position. It's towers have issues, gearboxes have issues, the same deal. But yes, the pricing pressure is tight, it's high. The performance requirement on the component manufacturers is very high. If they're looking at a longer term view for the company, that should reduce some of that immediate pressure. When you can demonstrate, I'm doing cost avoidance for down the road. But apparently that's not coming into play, at least that often. Still today, after a few decades of watching this, the same thing's going on.
Wow. Yeah, and I think this conversation comes up a lot. It came up with us. It's now coming up in our comments from the audience. Are OEMs trying to get out and build newer and larger platforms hastily or too quickly, or are some of those working well, or are we doing it too much? Ron, this comment says new turbine designs are only tested realistically by the customers on site. Mm-hmm. That pay for them, and then the OEM has you as a customer running and paying for the breakdowns. Essentially, are units adequately modeled before they're installed out there in the market? Any comment to that?
Yeah, well, I guess my comment to that would be, from the modeling side, it's essentially impossible to model everything. And I think the comment from the user, LinkedIn user there, it says, I think that's exactly right. Like, I think there is a little bit of I don't know if you want to call it, being the guinea pig. If you're the buyer of the first series of a new turbine, like, you're definitely taking risk. And I think that sort of plays into what was mentioned earlier about this, whatever the 4-year cycle that was referred to. My suspicion would be that cycle is, every 3-4 years, there's new tooling, there's new designs. To me, that's just a response from just building new things bigger, right? Like, the things that used to work on the previous design, you got all those issues ironed out. Okay, well, great. You move on to the next one that's bigger and better and badder. And guess what? There's some things you have to work out there as well. And you don't know about them until you get, good testing in the field, a verification of those designs under a bunch of different load conditions, environmental conditions. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask you guys to role play then in a minute. So, John, I'm going to have you role play. If you have all your hands on the levers as an OEM, and Ron, you have all your hands on the levers as an owner. How do you navigate this market? So John, let's I always like to ask the question. It's easy to critique an OEM until you've worked there and you see how complex their model is. But you've got a couple levers like price, quality, and let's call it innovation or growth. What do we need to change if you're now running one of the top 5 OEMs? What do you change to improve reliability and continue to be a viable manufacturer? Looks like John's got a glitch.
All right, Sam, I just had a whole audio dropout from you. I think I missed the entire question.
Sure, I'll repeat it because it did look like a glitch. So I'm back to role playing. I'll pick on Ron in a minute to be the wizard of owners. You're going to be the wizard of OEMs, right? You've got all the levers behind the veil.
Yep.
And if you could go in right now and you have a lever of price, and you have a lever of quality, and you have a lever of innovation and growth, what do you change to improve reliability and still be a viable business?
Oh, that's a good tight one. Now, this is going to be utopia. This is going to be my company on what
Sure.
I would like to do. Yep. One is I shove forward on the quality lever, and I can rely on historical data as far as warranty claims go to back up why I'm saving the owner money. That's simple. I will also, from the quality side, I'll also throw in what my dream here is the birth certificate of the blade. When a blade comes out of the factory, the owner knows what they need to know about that blade. As simple as this. There's obviously a repair patch on the blade. There's a color difference, large rectangle. That's fine. If I ask about it today, I'm told that's I'm sorry, as the manufacturer, as the OEM, my customer asked me, and I'm going to tell them it's covered by the warranty. Don't worry. Standard work practices have occurred here, not an issue. Why does this matter? Ron's going to come back to me in 4 years and say, I got a crack here. Well, if I tell him what that was in basics, was it paint? Was it just the top laminate of some biax? Was it a bond line repair? Each of those three have very different risk levels associated to it. So I'm selling to my end user, I'm selling them enough knowledge that as they own the asset from me, they're going to be able to make rational decisions on risk down the road and repair costs versus replacement or whatever else. So that's what I'm pushing. I'm pushing that quality lever forward. The technology, that's yes, we need to get bigger. Yes, but more importantly, we need to become more efficient in our energy production. And downtime's a killer. Turbines laying on the ground are killers, obviously. So I'm actually going to lean forward on that quality lever first. And of course, I'm distorted with my background.
Great. No, thanks. And look, I like to ask this question and bring down the defenses and all the antagonists, against OEMs because it's easy to pick, but when you're there, they have a complex model and financially, none of them are doing great. I'd love to see them be successful. I'd love to see the reliability improve. I'd love to be on that board and hear, exactly what some of those folks are talking about, why it continues to have problems. But let's flip it over. You're an owner now, and you have the levers. Ron, do you have the same levers, or do you have to add in some levers to make sure you know what the OEM's doing? Do you have to have a prediction prevention? Do you have to have a third-party lever? How would you answer that question in the owner utopia in this market?
The owner utopia. Yeah, well, I mean, the owner utopia is right. You get basically the highest quality at the lowest price, right? And it's the best stuff. But in reality, like you see this in other markets too. That there are market leaders. like take cars for example, right? You got the Teslas of the world that are pushing the envelope, right? And then you got Toyota or whatever. Which is arguably a little slower in technology, but they're higher, at least in terms of their reputation on quality. So I think there's got to be a balance. And to be honest, like owners do look at, the length of time that a turbine has been on the market. They do gauge these things. They know if they buy a turbine that's brand new that there's some inherent risk there. But to me, and I'm going to maybe get a little bit more on the OEM utopia, but I feel like that more could potentially be done in this newborn phase, when platforms are new, to really try and vet them out. And what I'm referring to is like, when a platform is brand new, there's a lot of things you don't know about it, right? And I feel like more could be done in that sort of in-between stage when, in the first couple of years of operating that machine, in terms of really exploring, what the issues are on the maintenance side, and just looking at every last thing, being very, very meticulous about what's going on in terms of blade health, obviously the rest of the machine. But yeah, I guess I just feel like more monitoring could and should be done. And the process that I think of when I think about that is the process when a new aircraft is fielded. When a brand new aircraft is fielded, those guys are all over that thing. When it goes into the fleet, there's a lot of feedback that goes back to the OEM from the maintainers. This is working. Oh, we're seeing cracks here. This is a little bit of problem. So you spend extra time in the first, in those, inaugural years of operation to really make sure that your platform is reliable and, it's going to meet the customer's needs, as opposed to just throwing it out there. And I'm being a little facetious, right? I know the OEMs don't just throw it out there, but yeah.
Okay, so Ron, what's going to get you to come to me? Expecting.
Now I don't know, Ron, if you were supposed to get that telepathically.
Yeah. It got broken up a little bit.
That's the real test. Did you get that question telepathically? Let's see how good you really are.
No, I didn't.
Go ahead, John. Try it again. We lost you for a second. No worries. Hey, listen, right? Thank you, by the way, Sam. We had to drop off for like 10 minutes fixing our problem. So, anyways, John, hit the question again, and Ron, we won't test you on the telepathic skills today.
All right, Ryan, we'll try this again. So what's it going to take for those first few years of that initial model rolling out for you to come buy them from me? Are you expecting 5 years of free maintenance or a complete drop it in my pants? I'm going to show you all the data from the SCADA system, what we consider our IP. Are you expecting that to be shared with you as well?
Oh no, not necessarily, but I do think that if I say what needs to be shared, I wasn't even referring to sharing. I was just referring to the actual process. But in terms of sharing, yeah, there should be some things that are shared in that process. I mean, if we own the equipment, like obviously, probably the same agreements that we have now probably work. I would expect.
Does the business model work for you as it is on those prototype units? It's a higher risk, but expecting you be looking for something.
I think that the way that the market works now, I think, you go out and you buy the newer turbine with the higher, higher energy output, lower cost of energy. On paper, everything looks great, right? And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. You're going to take a little risk. I guess what I'm saying is, it's not clear to me that there's enough risk avoidance on the part of the OEMs when you field a new platform. And what I mean by that risk avoidance is really following up. Oh, we've got 4 plants. We got this one up in Canada. We got this one over in Florida, and this one down in Cuba or whatever. How are they actually running? Is that really happening? I don't know. I haven't worked on that side of the OEM, but I've certainly worked, on the owner side when you have a new plant and you're new, and then you're like, whoa. Shouldn't there be an engineer showing up every 3 or 4 months to make sure everything is going good here? You know what I mean?
So playing devil's advocate, I'm the OEM.
Before, right? Like, Sam, go.
Sure. So I was going to play devil's advocate, and I'm going to be the OEM who said, okay, I heard you say you want more quality, you want more information off the line, and I'm willing to do that, but I'm going to charge you for it. It's going to cost more, and it's probably going to slow me down a little bit too. And you're already telling me I'm too busy and a little less responsive than you'd like. What's the response to the fact that any change to the current mode of operations adds time and money to your existing formula? Is that acceptable?
That's a perfect question, because presumably, if you're a manufacturer of anything, hopefully you've already found your lowest cost, balance, right? So yeah, if we're asking for more, we're thinking it's going to cost more. But I think that's a really good question. What would we be willing to pay more for? And the only way I can think that makes sense is if it literally takes time, or either it takes time off of us, so lowers our overhead in terms of managing things or fixing things, or we feel like we're going to produce more power for the same upfront cost over the long term. And I think making that argument that you're going to produce more power, you're going to be more reliable over the long term, that's probably the answer, but that's the harder sell, right? Because you're basically trying to say, oh, okay, well, I predict if we do this, then it's going to do that. And as you said, it's not a small amount of money that you'd be gambling, right? And when I say you, I mean the owner is saying, oh, okay, well, I think I'm going to spend an extra, $500,000 a year on this plant for this particular thing because I think it's going to be better. So that is the challenge and the risk, and I don't have the answer to that.
Now, if I'm selling to
the business case, the business case doesn't make sense. Sorry, John. There is still a delay on my end from me to you. From the business case to make, this is a bit of a touchy subject. where it cuts in financiers, those who are financing these projects, and get investment back and ensuring that these wind farms are profitable, because ultimately they need to be profitable to maintain. And so this is that concept. So I think there's a mixture of the profitability of these investments and these assets and the performance coming from the OEMs. And it seems like there's a race, the first market versus the quality. At the same time, there's added pressure to be more profitable in an already very low. So it almost feels like this discussion has to happen in smaller chunks to address each of the major influential events that are truly in the end not allowing for growth to the consumer, even on the back end, who's paying that additional fee in their electric bill for more clean, renewable energy. And I think it almost feels like these are things that aren't being discussed, right? It's not one source. And I wonder if that is a big part of why we're not growing or maturing as fast as we should. When you look at aerospace, when you look at automotive, when you look at mining and other industries that have large assets, aren't the first industry, to have assets. We've solved problems to latency within gearboxes to a degree. As we started to solve the problems with lubricants, we solved different issues with products that didn't cross over, that needed. And then, of course, as we got bigger. And it almost seems like every couple of years, the turbines get bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's no listing of this from the data we're just collecting is actually influencing the new design. It's just, I don't see that. Maybe I'm wrong, but it almost feels like we're more in a race to be more profitable and first to market, and that's dominating everything. And then we're just hoping to keep up, and we're so field. We'll figure it out. As soon as we do, we're going to redesign it, throw out a different design. We solved that problem, but we created it.
If we back up 10 or 15 years, as I recall it, the market would take anything. It wasn't a question of quality of product. It was a question of quantity. You get it out the door, it's already sold. Today, with the pricing pressure, I don't know from the sales side. I don't know if that has slowed down. But what those glory days did, you're right, Rigo. It was make them bigger, make them faster, and they came out the door with the same problems we had on the previous model, because all it was scaled up. And in some cases, as Ron alluded to, when you make things larger, you uncover things that were unknown before, or it was a small enough of an influence on the smaller rotors that it didn't matter. And now today it does matter, and it's significant, sometimes matter. So the industry kind of, I would say, sat on its haunches during those days. We could have improved things much tighter, but there wasn't a financial driver to do so. Today, there is the financial driver.
Yeah, and I think this is the art form of development, turbine modeling, asset management, right? You have some owners who figure that out, some who have the scale, the contingency, the model, right? Because it's a big combination of things, including what's the expectation of what that platform's going to deliver over a 10, 20, or 30-year period. With that said, Ron, I bring it back to you. How does an owner navigate in this market? There's a lot of variability. You might be a big, medium, or small owner, and you have to look at buying a turbine that you're lucky to get. You might have to go pick a turbine that's left because the other owners have purchased them, and then when you get this platform, you may or may not choose to work with the OEM. You inevitably have to take something into your own hands. You can't just purchase a model and let someone run it, or you can, and then there's some risk. What are some of the basic things owners have to think about running turbine models in North America, at least nowadays, when you get into a new project?
Well, I think to start with, the first question is kind of how do you navigate that? And our we're working on these kinds of questions with my team at Lee. We're just trying to figure out, okay, what kind of questions should we be asking ourselves? And so there's this ideal world, right, where you get to evaluate each design and kind of vet each one. Like, okay, these are the pros and cons, and this is the best turbine, right? And these are the options we want, and that type of thing. That's the ideal world. The reality is, you can do that. But as you said, the machines that are available is not always exactly what you wanted. And maybe what you wanted, when you start to look at the technology risk, is like, oh, okay, well, maybe this machine looks the best on paper, but it's got these 2 or 3 things that are, let's say, brand new technologies or new enough that you see risk. And by risk, I mean potential risk of, maybe if it's a brand new, never been tested blade in the field or something like that, that's larger than, maybe it's the largest blade ever made or something like that, right? There is somebody somewhere always putting up the largest blade, right? Every year they get bigger. But if you're that group, then you've got to think like, oh man, if these things fail, what happens, right? What's the risk if there's a serial defect on XYZ component? So all of that has to be done, and then to be balanced with, okay, well, OEM ABC, how's their service department? How does that work? Do I want a long-term service agreement or not? Which you kind of alluded to, right? Some owners are just simply not doing it, and others that's their main path. So, I mean, those are the basics, and that doesn't really answer the questions, but it kind of just illustrates that, yeah, there's a lot of navigating to do, right? Like, do you pick that platform that's 2 years, 3 years old, that's very well proven, and it's just maybe a small tweak and you've got your platform? Or do you just go, oh, we want the biggest, baddest, lowest COE we can possibly get, take on some risk? Yeah, maybe, so.
Yeah, well, what I'm hearing is it depends, and the good owners know how to answer that question, and sometimes more successful than others. Well, one thing I hear a lot about, we had this conversation, and other people bring this up, is that in one of our original early comments here in the comment section is the wind industries like the aviation in the 30s. Then you inevitably hear people go to standards, and there's no data standards and there's no industry standards. John, I want to turn this back over to you. If we had a magic wand right now and we had standards, is that making the industry more reliable and more profitable for the end users?
Let me, as opposed to aviation, which is heavily government regulated, and there's other reasons for that, like lots of people can die. If we look at the automotive industry, the automotive industry, if you want to supply automotive, you follow a set of standards. These are not government standards. These are put in by these guys. These guys are chasing tenth of a penny on prices. You want to change something on your production floor, you want to move a component, you cannot without oversight from your customer. It's that tight. And the reason why they do it, it's cost savings all across the board. You want to supply automotive, you follow these quality standards. You have these systems in place because it saves you money, which they expect a share of. That's simple. So when we talk about, I keep going back to the cradle to grave documentation, but that's just a small piece of it on quality systems. If you've got a quality system, it pays for itself. You can look it up in literature, but forget that. Just looking at warranty reserve, looking at what you have to do in your production facilities when you have a problem in the field, and you have a quality department that is functioning, somebody comes into oversight, and you're paying for that. And as I mentioned, this happens every several years, apparently, in our industry, where those expenses skyrocket up, and these are all avoidable expenses, every single one of them. The repeating errors that happen going out the door from model to model to model, the vast majority, if not 100% of those, are avoidable. And if the industry tightens up to provide that, the cost of the product can drop, or the profit margins increase.
So a minute ago, I said it depends, and it depends on the owner. So 20 years ago, Wouldn't a savvy owner had known the industry's immature? We're going to have reliability issues until there are standards. We better plan on it. We better take this into our own hands. Are there folks out there who are disappointed, but that just never really assessed where we're at as an industry, that are learning through the hard way? And are we not going to get through this period and get better? Are we not going to be better in a decade from now? So past, present, and future. Is this really that far off from where we expect it to be?
Are the owners changing? Previously, I could throw owners into what I understand about the owners into two buckets. There's the owner who's going to operate that turbine, and they want 20 years out of it, which is what the claim was made at the time. I've been hearing some people are saying, well, we're going to drop the power on it, and we're going to go for 40 years on it. And then there's the owners who are going to own it through the warranty period, and they're looking to sell. What's today's market look like? What's that split now? There was a lot of these other guys in the past, and they would buy any turbine available, generally speaking. So what are we dealing with today? How's that market look today?
Yeah, thoughts on that, Ron, from the owner perspective?
I do have thoughts on that, and I haven't thought on the previous question. So I guess I'll answer this one, maybe bounce back. But
You
my
bet.
thought on that is, my thought is that my observations, and I'm not by any means an expert on the business side of and the finance of wind plants, but what I have seen is there is a distinct difference in the way that owners A, B, and C will operate a facility. And what I mean by that is the type of owner. You know, are they a co-op in the Midwest? Are they owned by private equity? Are they owned by a large, state-run European fund or something like that, right? Those different owners actually do end up driving at literally the site level, how things do get done, and by and large part, it's budgeting process and things like that. But it does have an impact. So, and without going into too much detail, you can kind of imagine, short-term owners have short-term view, and they do make short-term investments. Long-term, it's obviously long-term. But it does have an impact.
Now, as you're saying that, I'm thinking large utility. Give me the equipment. I'll run it myself. I don't care about the warranty period. After 2 years, we'll take care of it. If I'm a pension fund, 20 to 30 year OEM service contract, that's good. And then if you're an IPP, seems like you're somewhere in the middle, right? And as you go down the list of owners, you might see some trends like that. To your point, that the OEMs have to think about as far as who is their customer persona. I think that's a great point on filtering. The different things we're hearing from different people based on that model. That is their initial expectation. If someone's upset, it's because their expectation isn't being met. That's great, Ron.
Yeah, I did want to bounce back to the previous comment about the manufacturing quality and just in general. And I wanted to ask John, like, you talked about standards and expectations for standards, and there is let's just focus on blades for a second. So, okay, blades. All right, there is a blade design standard the IEC has, and DNV and GL they have different design standards, but they are design standards. Are there, and at least I'm actually pretty sure these exist, but I'm not that familiar with them. But are there manufacturing standards that exist and or should be, let's say, pushed harder? Because I don't see that in contracts, or I don't see, it's got to be manufactured in this way, to this particular standard.
I'm not aware, and this is not my side of the blade industry, the contract language. I'm not aware of anybody asking for any specific quality standard to be met. It may be in a contract. I'm just not aware of that. What keeps catching my eye from the manufacturing side is standard composite industry practices, such as no hair gel allowed on an operator on the floor. Someone's going to do this and touch a fabric, and you've got a delamination happening. Simple things like that. We're not referring. It used to be the ACMA, American Composite Manufacturing Association, had a set of industry standards, so to speak. And there was some talk at the trade shows about how we could incorporate that into our production. Likewise with blade repair out in the field, Erebus is an amazing, I'm not affiliated with them, training program. And our operators in the field doing repairs, are they trained to a standard? In-house standards, yes. Common across the industry, no, not that I'm
What
aware.
about ISO 9000, ISO 14000? Those are quality.
Yeah,
standards.
basically, you write the procedure, any procedure you want, and it's ISO certified.
Those are process standards, right?
Process standards, not
right. Okay.
the, yeah. So that doesn't get us where we want to go, I believe. Now, some of this you start stepping into the IP, but some of it is just as basic industry common knowledge that can be standardized.
But it's neat. I'm looking at the comments right now, and there's a mixture. There's some folks saying, yeah, there's standards and it's way better. And I like hearing it's way better because I can think of a lot of way better examples too, especially, being in wind in the early, O's compared to now. Things are different. You see someone wrote Wild Wild West. I have to agree. I've used that phrase between, breaker operations to, we used to do gearbox inspection campaigns, right?
Listen,
nobody does that anymore.
Sam, if anybody remembers working on the GEs back in the day, right? It's the little white button. That's all I have to say. the little white button. And anybody who knows that we would never do that today. But it solved so many problems, right? And that's so the little wild west.
But in the same mix, we see people saying there's still not enough. There's still not enough for training. There's still not enough for private owners. So I think there's a sense, mixed sense of optimism and pessimism here again. And I heard that from Ron and John. Kind of depends on the owner, depends on the turbine model, might depend on the OEM. There's a glimmer of hope. It sounds like as we get towards the end of the call, we're saying there's hope, which is great, and there's some improvement, but there's still some things we need to do really better. And Rigo, as we get to signing off here, might want to give you that last word to round up the conversation.
No, I appreciate it. And so first off, I want to thank all of our guests and thank you as well, Sam, for co-hosting this with me and essentially hosting it today. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, AT&T, for totally screwing up my internet today. Love that.
Hey, how old is the telecom industry and the internet? Let's talk about their reliability next.
Yeah, no kidding. And we just had fiber installed here with like a 2 down, 2 up. But apparently Mondays they don't run full, I guess. Mondays,
they probably lubricated it with peanut oil, and it's being eaten by mice.
Yeah,
that happened. That happened in wind. That's a real example. Yeah. Peanut oil lubricant. Yeah. Real story.
Yeah. Underground issues. Yeah. You know what? Listen, here's what I've got. Number one is what is special about our industry is the fact that we're willing to communicate and that we are learning. There is a ton of things that are happening on a day-to-day basis that I believe really makes this industry exciting. And those of us who are coming from other places, I came from the power industry prior to getting in renewables, and many of us have come from different places. We have found an opportunity here to really grow and make each other better. I do believe there's a lot of area for us to grow. And what I want to be able to get into even further, now that we've really kind of opened this discussion with you gentlemen, is really why is it that we don't have data standards, data practices that really should be implemented in looking at the life expectancy and the life of an asset? Because we make our claims, there's a lot of data involved, there's a lot of different manufacturers we have the opportunity to choose from, but we make comments looking at the automobile industry, looking at a certified, dealership. How do they retain their dealership status in following the process? How do we make our processes better? There isn't a service provider out there that doesn't want to satisfy the need of the owner operator, but then we look at an industry that has very low profitability, demand continues to get better. We want more, and it's giving the provider to be able to offer less under those restrictions. So there's going to be a lot of different perspectives, because you have the OEM saying we're doing a good job. You have a service provider saying if you did so good, we wouldn't have business, right? There's so much out there that we can get into, but I think the question comes down to, as we're starting to standardize elements like safety training and other aspects, why do we not have a standardization in data management? Why are we not looking at this on a global front, in a regional, to be able to say, look, we can track this to those time, that factory, that crew, that time of the year, the ambience, how this mix. Maybe they're doing this, but it's not necessarily being shared. And I believe this is where we need to get into. And why does that matter? Because there are folks out there who are bringing new innovation to the market. That it comes down to data management. It truly does. I believe that in the end, we're going to be able to make the right decisions because of the data that we have. So again, I wanted to thank everybody on the panel. Ron, I want to thank you for being here very much. John Geno, the same as well. Sam, thank you so much. I want to thank our sponsor, Autonomy, for helping put this on. We have the rest of the year we're going to be doing this. And on the next month's episode, I want to get further into that. The standards and the practices that are being done today. How do we make improvements and be able to share data? Well, we're not going on somebody's IP, where we're not trying to take away somebody's edge in being able to operate as a business and be successful. But how do we bring information that's going to be shareable that we can all be better from? And I want to ask hard questions. So for you, the audience, this is what I ask. Let us put stuff in the comments. What do you want to see us as into more? What can we dive deeper into to solve some of the problems? What is out there that can be offered that we can all better as an industry? In the end, we want the industry to continue to stay strong, and we want to be able to continue to innovate and offer data and offer information. It's going to help everybody make better decisions and run these assets longer. Really, that's what it comes down to. Final thought, final word from anybody. Go ahead and chime in. We've got 2 minutes, and we're going to let everybody.
I think you touched on it, Rigo. It's the open communication. We're not looking to violate anybody's intellectual property, but if we don't communicate problems, issues between each other, between owners, operators, suppliers, we're blind. We can't make it better because we don't know. I'm not aware of all the problems other people are having with the product, so how can I respond to it? And when I say with the product, I'm talking about as produced as factory through logistics, all the way to final life.
All right, yeah, my final thoughts are getting better comes back to cycles of learning. And to get better, you go through cycles of learning, you try something new, you regroup, you write it down. But I think as an industry, the part to really make that work with a huge number of people, we have to have a good standards and recommended practices type culture, within the community. I think it's getting better. And I've worked in standards, so people that are involved in ACP know that I've worked in standards and that kind of stuff. But I believe like in the core, like my core, that we have to do that. And it's very, it's not exciting. It's not, awesome, stuff, but that's how the industry gets better, right? Is you learn a lesson, you write it down, and then you put it out there. So.
Hey, thanks, Rigo, for having us all together. And I think I'd say the industry's lean and mean. It's mature enough that you have ISPs now consolidating. You have OEMs adjusting their models. I think we're going to see people continue to innovate with turbine size. We're going to see reliability failures, but we're also going to see some successes. And profit is that, that mystery everyone's still chasing, because not everyone can figure it out. So keep it simple, be smart, and run a fast business. And good luck out there to everybody. It's not a cakewalk at this point and win. And if you know what you're getting into, you can still run a great business. So thanks, Rigo.
Listen, have a great and wonderful rest of your week. Have an amazing day. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. For those of you registered, documents, we're also going to give a link to this video so you can go back and watch it. Have a great, we'll talk to you soon, and I hope to see you next month for the next and stuff. We get deeper into the conversation. Have a good one. Don, go ahead and head us out.